Hello and welcome to another spoiler movie review from us, well, me, here at World of Stew. As you can probably see behind me, I mentioned it before, my Batman shelf now has some residents. We've got Batman over there on my right, so I'm guessing that's probably your left. And on the other end, Phantasm, pair of figures from the Batman Mark of Phantasm animated movie, although I'm probably going to get kicked out of the geek fraternity because I opened the box and put them on the shelf, which is like a cardinal sin. Anyway, as I mentioned in my Transformers The Last Night review at the end, this next movie that I decided to watch, because I am a glutton for punishment, was the remake of The Mummy. Now, I've seen a couple of reviews of this, and the people are making out like this is a remake of the what's his name, Brendan Fraser movies from a few years back, as though those were the original Mummy films, as opposed to the old school Universal Mummy films with was it Lon Chaney, I think, played the Mummy in a couple of them. I might be wrong there. I'm not that au fait with my old school monster mythology, as I probably I should be a lot better at that. Put it this way. So this isn't a remake of the Brendan Fraser Mummy films. This is an attempt to make the start on a new franchise of horror movies, because everybody now wants to do that because the MCU has proved so successful, even though everybody else who seems to be trying to do these movie universe franchises seems to be falling on their ass. Let's be honest. DCEU, I'm looking at you. So you get the idea of where this film is going right from the beginning, because you know when you get like the movie company names that are involved coming up at the beginning, you get one that says the Dark Universe or a Dark Universe movie or something like that, because that's what they're going to call it, a Dark Universe. Yeah. So the movie obviously stars Tom Cruise, and we get an opening where we get the kind of usual bog standards look back at how the mummy came to be. In this one, it's a female mummy as opposed to a male mummy, and it's like this evil woman who kills a baby, and she becomes possessed with this power, and she gets mummified alive, and put in a box. And all of this is accompanied by a voiceover from Mr. Russell Crowe, who is not a bad actor. I'm not a particularly huge Russell Crowe fan, but in this movie, later on, you're like, what is... There's a lot of actors at the moment where you're just like, what the hell are you doing? So then we get to meet, after we've had the opening monologue and supposition about what's going on, we meet Tom Cruise and his mate, who are part of the armed services, but they basically don't follow orders, and they liberate old treasures that are being, and try to stop them being destroyed by ISIS. Although ISIS is never mentioned, I don't think, by name, but obviously that's happening in the real world where ISIS are destroying old monuments and all the rest of it. So they try and save these, but they actually take them for themselves and sell them on the black market. They get into a... See, now, at the beginning of this, it's basically like a Mission Impossible film set in the desert, with a background of there's going to be a mummy. Because Tom Cruise is jumping around, he's firing a machine gun, he's taking shots, he's firing shots, he's avoiding explosions, he's doing this, he's doing that, he's falling off of buildings. It's basically just like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. The army shows up, saves him and his mate's ass. This woman shows up. There's some really bad, lame dialogue where she's basically... They admit that they've had sex. He stole a map off her after they'd had sex, and she insinuates that he only lasted 15 minutes. Or 15... Was it seconds or minutes? I'm going to assume it's minutes, because nobody's going to say Tom Cruise is 15 seconds unless you're Katie Holmes and you want to get out of Scientology, allegedly. He, of course, denies this, going, oh, we were up all night, which is a line from a WWE wrestler whose name I can't... I think it was Triple H, actually, may have said it, but when he was part of DX. But that's got nothing to do with this. They uncover the tomb of the mummy, Tom Cruise being the buffoon that he is, he releases the mummy's casket. They take it on a boat. His friend becomes possessed. He then ends up dead. Now, here's where it gets confusing because Tom Cruise shoots him 3 times by accident. He's holding this gun, and this happens throughout the film. In that 1 minute, Tom Cruise seems to be able to kick everybody's ass and is like an armed warrior, Mission Impossible type Ethan Hunt character. In the other ones, he's like this bumbling idiot who doesn't seem to have any clue what he's doing. It keeps like flip flopping between the two, and you're just like, well, just make up your mind. You're either one or the other. You can't be both. You can't just change and go, oh well, actually, I don't really know what I'm doing just because it suits the scene. So the plane that they're on crashes. Tom Cruise is presumed dead, but he's not because he's been having visions of the mummy, the woman whose name escapes me. And he comes back from the dead. He starts having visions of his dead friend, who's kind of like this zombie type thing. The mummy, the female mummy, escapes from her tomb, and she's kind of crawling around because she's all decomposed and everything. Some pretty bad CGI, to be honest. She then becomes a succubus, for want of a better phrase, starts sucking the life force out of people and turning them into her undead army of things. Tom Cruise hangs out with the woman who basically starts to fall in love with him, I guess, and says, I understand, blah, blah, blah. She takes him to meet Russell Crowe, who, when they get to the Russell Crowe character, this is an hour into the film, and you get the idea of where they're going, because there's loads of hints there at other famous old monsters. There's what I guess is a Dracula skull, although quite how you'd get a Dracula skull, I don't know. There's nods to like the Wolfman. I think there may even be the Merman in there. And when he meets Russell Crowe, we discover that Russell Crowe is actually Dr. Henry Jekyll. Yes, Russell Crowe is playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They are embalming the mummy. They've managed to capture her. She's kind of like full of life now, and she's trying to get this dagger. She wants to kill Tom Cruise, and he'll become her immortal love, and yada yada. There's all this nonsense going on. Earlier on in the film, there's like a scene where Tom Cruise goes from the bumbling idiot into a ninja assassin. He starts like killing zombies and driving an ambulance like Ethan Hunt would, and blah blah blah. They meet this. Tom Cruise then has an altercation with the Dr. Jekyll but the Mr. Hyde version of the Jekyll and Hyde character. And I'm not quite sure. This is the part where I'm on about Russell Crowe. I'm not really sure what the hell he's doing, because if you remember in my review of Transformers The Last Night, I said Anthony Hopkins looked like he had basically just popped an E at the start of every day's film and he was off his tits the entire time. Well, Russell Crowe is obviously trying to outdo Anthony Hopkins in the overacting stakes here. It kind of reminded me a bit of, if you've watched Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think it was the last series, not the current one with the whatever the hell's going on. I don't know. I stopped watching because it just bored the piss out of me. The one with Carl McLachlan turning into a kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type character and chewing up the scenery, something chronic. Well, Russell Crowe kind of channels that spirit. Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise, whatever the hell his name is. He basically reverts him back to his Dr. Jekyll version. There's then a final battle where the woman who was with Tom Cruise ends up dead. Tom Cruise then kills himself with this dagger that the mummy was trying to kill him with. This gives him superhuman strength. He comes back to life, not unlike Kevin Garvey in The Leftovers. If you want to check out my Leftovers review, which I didn't do in video form because I couldn't have done it justice with whatever I said, but you can go onto Facebook, look for World of Stew, and you'll find it on there. Quick little plug in the middle of this review. He then basically becomes a succubus himself, sucks the life out of the female mummy, and he then brings the woman back to life, and then he vanishes. So I'm guessing he is now the mummy. So in future films he can come back and be the mummy because he's like this super powered thing now, and there's also an indication at the end where a sandstorm's following him that he is indeed now the mummy. Now I've pretty much skipped over that in 10 minutes exactly now. And some people who've watched this who will like it will say, well, I'm not doing it justice. Well, I am doing it justice because it was terrible. There was some really weak attempts at humour in this film. Tom Cruise kind of just seems like he's phoning it in and playing the same character that he does in all his films now. Which is a shame because I really like some of Tom Cruise's work, such as Vanilla Sky, Minority Report. But nowadays, he's just, I don't know, maybe he's going the Liam Neeson route and just wants to be an action hero. Because in this film, he kind of reminds me a little bit of the guy whose name escapes me now in the sort of Tomb Raider-esque games on the PS4. And again, I really should have looked that up before I did this video. But anyone who knows this, who knows what that PS4 game series is with the sort of treasure hunter, just post below. You know where it is, and you can put me to rights. This film hasn't done particularly well at the box office. It's pretty much bombed. So is there going to be a dark universe? I really hope not, because if this is the best they can do at the beginning, then they really should just give up. But then again, the DCEU, they made Man of Steel, which was shite. They then followed it up with more shite, and then an average film with lots of slow-mo. See, I just mentioned slow-mo every video now because I like to do that. What else? Russell Crowe isn't great in this film. There's just some relationship because Tom Cruise's dead friend keeps popping up, and it just struck me. There's been other films that I can't think of off the top of my head where an undead, American Werewolf in London, for instance, where the David Norton's friend at the beginning of the film obviously gets eaten by the werewolf, and he keeps popping up and giving advice to David Norton's character. It just reminds me of that. He just like every now and again pop up and lead him further along the story path. I never thought there would be a Mummy film that would make me appreciate Brendan Fraser's Mummy films. Hell, this even makes me appreciate The Scorpion King with The Rock. And let's be honest, we're all pretty much getting sick of The Rock now because he's the biggest movie star in the world and is making some pretty terrible choices, but that's a story for another video. So The Mummy, another bad film. I just seem to be on a roll of watching really bad films at the moment, but that's okay because, as I said, I watched all 3 seasons of The Leftovers and it was awesome. So there is always hope. Coming up, there are a couple of films that I'm going to watch, so hopefully I'll be able to do videos on them. We got War of the Planet of the Apes, Dunkirk's coming out soon, and then of course we've got the Justice League. That should be fun. Anyway, for a score on The Mummy, I'm going to give it 4 out of 10. It's slightly below average, which would obviously be 5. And it really doesn't deserve any more. And if this is what they can come up with, then they really shouldn't bother. That was that for the spoiler review of The Mummy. So until next time, keep it geek.